Okay, so here we are. Today, we live in a very complicated world. And sometimes we don't know why things happen. Countries are pitted against each other, and cultures, economies, the investors, which is a group in itself, the investors, every country says we want to be good for the investors, but who are the investors anyway? So anyway, this is a complicated world. And India is in a huge, huge transformation. Let me tell you how I see India in the history. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I don't know enough. And what I see is mostly from the effects of India on other people around Eurasia. You know more about India, but what you know is what's inside India. You read Sanskrit, I don't. And you know many, many things about Indian history, which I know some. I always enjoy listening to Major Mathur and others who have incredible knowledge of Indian history and the stories of gods. And what I know is what other people know and got about from India, and how India influenced other people, and also what are the bridges between India and the people of Eurasia. Why is it important? It's extremely important, and I'll tell you why. If you don't have these bridges, India is a totally isolated country. Now, some may say, hey, we're not isolated. We are an upcoming world power. We have money, technology, and everything. But let me tell you this. No world power was built on technology and money. And every world power failed when it relied on money and technology. Let's start with the Sumerians. The Sumerians was an empire. Well, it was a very small empire. The city-states had 10,000 people. Nevertheless, they created culture equivalent of the cultures of several 100,000 or million people. Now, they started out as a very spiritual bunch of people. They had fantastic mythology, just like you, Indians. You have all the stories about Shiva and so on. And the Sumerians had their story about Enkidu and Ninhursag and all the other gods and goddesses. And then slowly, this country became financialized. Why? Because 90% of the finds from the Sumerians are business contracts. These guys were trading like crazy. They got into commerce. They got into finance. And very soon they lost their country. I continue. The Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was founded by Mehmet, who conquered Byzantine, Constantinople. And that was a miracle. It was like today conquering the US. Who can conquer a country which has all the finance of the world, all the contracts, all the connections, everything, and everybody depends on that country? The Byzantine Empire was exactly like this. Nobody could exist outside of this empire. They had the money, they had everything, they had the business. And if you wanted to be good, you have to be inside this business. So the Genovians, everybody was in Byzance, And when I was in Istanbul, I lived there for 4 years. I lived eight places on earth for many years. I saw a beautiful big building, which was the building of the Genovians. Why? Because they traded like crazy. Why in Constantinople? Because that was like America today. You had to be there to do anything, okay? Now, nobody believed that this immense power can be challenged, not destroyed, but even challenged. Why? Because if any country came up against them, they just bought the king. That's it. They had the money. They had everything. And suddenly, somebody came up who had no money. He didn't have money. He had a strong will, and he had an ambition. And he also had a vision. His name was Mehmet. And Mehmet gathered his army, and he conquered Byzance, Constantinople. I think it was 1453. Maybe I'm wrong with the date, with a few years. And that was such a blow to the East Roman Empire that they never recovered. Actually, the East Roman Empire was ended. The richest empire of the world was ended by the purest people. Poorest people. Mehmed didn't have money.
Anand,
He had people.
so now lecture to Facebook पे सुन.
He had an army. Okay? He had people committed to him, faithful to him. And he had a vision. And his people followed his vision. So the reason I'm saying this is this. Now, many people would say, oh, India, yeah, maybe in the past it had a lot of spiritual power, maybe a lot of spiritual influence. But today it's Bengaluru and capital, money, which speaks. There's a Hungarian saying, dog barks, money speaks. Okay, so, but not everybody believes that. Not everybody. Now, the Indian influence all over Eurasia was not money. It was not business. Indian sages, yogis, teachers, medical doctors, Ayurveda doctors, yogis went all over Eurasia, and they taught the people. They were teaching people. India didn't use armies. India didn't use money. Actually, India had the huge influence in Eurasia through yoga, vastu, ayurvedic medicine, religion, and art. And these countries were very happy to receive all this from India. First of all, Central Asia was the recipient of Indian culture, especially during the Kushan Empire. Now we can see the Kushan Empire, the maps. The second, I think the second slide shows the Kushan Empire. Okay, this really repeats what I said now. That's the text, yes. And I can repeat parts of it. You see, here you see the major geographical settings, but it's not complete because Loyang is missing in China. Bodhidharma went to Loyang. He was received by the king with the greatest honor. And he founded the Shaolin monastery. Okay, he invented the Shaolin practice, and up until today, there is a white horse temple in Loyang. So it's not in this map, actually. It's also not in the map to show that in Sichuan and Kansu and Qinghai, in all China, there were literally tens of kingdoms which were Buddhist. They brought Buddhism to China. All these kingdoms were uh, uh, founded by Hun aristocracy. The Hun had an incredible liking of India. They loved India, and they took Indian culture. The Hun took Indian culture to China. So much so that up until today, Buddhism is a major part of Chinese culture. China is Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. Now forget about the communism, because communism is a new thing, but even the communists go back to Confucian ideas and so on, so on. But I've been to China many times. They are seriously Buddhist. And I haven't met one single Chinese who did not adore India. I went to the most famous bronze caster of Guangzhou, and she had an altar in her house. And she told me that this is the altar for her guru. And her guru was an Indian. So you can imagine, okay? Now, so in China, India actually conquered Eurasia, not with army, not with economy, not with money, but with spirituality, with yoga, with Ayurveda, and with art, actually. And today, this is my idea. If you move into a country with business, well, you may not be very successful. I know it from my own history. Sometime I went to countries and I didn't know the culture. And I didn't know what these people really think, what they value, what they want. And I failed miserably. The reason why, I don't want to get into the colonial period, but you see, during the colonial period, the Europeans really did not understand the countries they colonized, okay? That's why they introduced very harsh measures. And that's why they could not accommodate the culture of the countries. Now, about the Hun. The Hun were a special people. Imagine America reigning over the world for about 3,000 years. Is it possible? Maybe not, but the Hun did. How? They really did. First of all, they founded the Shia dynasty in China. Then they founded all the dynasties and all the countries you see on that map. How? Well, they had a very, very unique recipe. And I think today we should learn. We should definitely learn. When they invaded a country, they only fought the aristocracy, the king. They never touched the people. And very often, when they conquered China, the people joined them against the Chinese rulers. You know why? Because they were heavily taxed, they were poor, they were exploited. And the Hun instituted a much more human system. In the actual Hun empires, in their own countries, there was no taxation. Can you imagine that? No tax. There was no tax. The Avar, who were the white Huns, who used to be in India for a while, and they remained in India too, but some of them went to Europe and established the Avar Empire. They were so strong that the East Roman Empire, Constantinople, paid tribute, tax for them, for peace. Giant amount of gold solidus. Solidus was the Byzantine gold coin. Guess what the Avars did with the Byzantine solidus? They did not invest it into the Byzantine trade and I would say stock market, but whatever. They melted it and they made artworks out of it because it had no meaning for them. Money had no meaning for them. Nothing at all. They melted all the Byzantine solidus they got, and they got like a, I don't know the exact sum, several tons, I don't know, huge, huge amount every year. They melted it and they made beautiful artwork out of it. That's it. They were not economic minded people, you know. Now, India. India already conquered Eurasia once, spiritually. There was a brilliant book on yoga, which, you know, nominated yoga or said that yoga was the present of India to mankind. It's true. But now I'm only talking about Eurasia. Yes, yoga has been influential in every Eurasian countries, every Eurasian cultures. Why? Because these cultures did have something similar to yoga, and they were happy to receive the additional knowledge of yoga, and these two were melted together. Okay, we know yoga from the north. We know yoga from Central Asia and East Asia, even from not from West Europe, but okay, that area, Transylvania. But the Indian yoga was an incredible influence on all this. Ayurveda. I wrote a cookbook on healing food, and I used 4th and 5th century Uyghur sources, and they referred back to the great Hun emperors because their chefs, now the chefs are noblemen and the chefs were doctors, not like today. They knew much about health and medicine, not just cooking. And this cookbook, which you can buy only in Hungarian, unfortunately, today, and it's very, very successful. It sells out all the time. Talks about healing food, talks about the healing properties of every ingredients, not only plants and animals and seeds, but also of stones and metals, you know. Now, Ayurveda is the perfect parallel. So I had to look into Ayurveda to see how come they have the same kind of principles, but they're different. Well, it's easy. Ayurveda is in the south. And in the south, the ingredients were different. In the north, when you have 45 minus in the night, like in Mongolia and Central Asia, and 35 minus during the day, during the winter, you have to have a very different diet, but the principles are absolutely the same. Now, here you see what I consider India. The South is not in there, but today it should be there, and Bangladesh should be there too. But this is the Kushan Empire. And when I looked into the places where the 32 parts of Sundari can be found, many of them are outside of what is India today. Why? Because India was much bigger. India was the Kushan Empire. Now, the Kushans have a very interesting history. They used to live on the left side of the Yellow River, which is today China. But don't be misled. These were completely white people, very beautiful people. very, very smart and very good looking people, okay? And the Shunu, which is the Hun, the original Hun, who was in Mongolia, and their emperor was Maton, the Shanyu. They got into war with the Huna, and the Huna won. So the Kushans, who were called Yueqi in China, they were not called Kushan, Yuqi. The Yuqi migrated into Central Asia, and then they came down to India, and with the center of the Swat Valley in Pakistan, they founded a great empire. And I think this is one of the most exemplary empires in India. Now, the Kushans were completely tolerant to languages and religions. They promoted every language and every religion. They did not prioritize any of the religions and any of the languages. Now, the Kushans also had, great achievements in trade and everything. They promoted Buddhism, they promoted the Zoroaster religion, and the Hindu, everything they promoted. Okay, so the multicultural or multi-religious idea was really there, and even today, I don't think we have too many countries where you have this. Now, India should be a country like this. Okay, India has many languages and many religions, and the Kushans have shown a very good example how to handle this. Well, of course, at that time, some religions did not exist which exist today. So maybe they had an easier time. Okay, now here you see the big red part is the empire of basically Maton Shanyo. It's this empire was founded around 220 BC. It was basically a confederation of tribes, very powerful. And one interesting thing is, it has an organization based on the 10. Now, the 10 means that every 10 men elects a leader. And this leader leads them in war and in peace. And he is also the judge and the teacher of the children. Now, the women and the families belong to the men, the Huna were patriarchal. Now, then every 10 elects 100, the leader for the 100, which is 10, 10, okay? And then every 100 elects a leader for the 1,000, which is the Ming in the Genghis Khan era or army and organization. And then the famous is the 2 men, which is 10,000 men. Now, what Genghis Khan did, he adopted this system. This is why he could build the Mongolian Empire. This system was invented by the Huna. And this system of 10 can be found in every countries where the Huna were really, really settled. Like in my home country, Transylvania, we have 10s. Every village has 10s. And certain parts of the village called the lower 10, the upper 10, the this 10, the that 10. But anyway, they all call 10s because they belong to 10s. 10 men with 10 families with 1 elected leader. The elected leader of the 10 could be withdrawn any moment, even during battle. Okay? And then, of course, these leaders could not have any kind of, there was no corruption. Okay? That's it. There was no corruption. Now, here is a rather interesting map showing the Hun Khaganate. Well, I don't think this existed at the same time all the time. But anyway, on all these territories, you had Hun countries. This map a little bit coincides with the first one with the many black blotches. Now here you see the empire of Attila. Attila conquered Europe. They call him emperor, but he wasn't. The emperor was his father, Bendegus. Attila was a Tegin, just like Mihirakula. He was not the emperor because the Hun Empire was much bigger than Attila's empire. He was the king of the western part of the Huna. His father, Bendegus or Balamber, we have his name, we do two different spellings. His father, Balamber or Bendegus, was the king of the Western and the Eastern Empire. Okay, one second, please. Now, the question is again, why is this so important for India? Because now India is very happy with some newfound powers. I know about these powers. I used to be into software development, and 30 years ago when I visited Unisys CAD CAM in Boulder, Colorado, they had 2,000 research engineers. All of them were Indians. So Indians really took over the IT industry, first in the US, then they established themselves in Bengaluru. And now it's a very popular idea that India will be an IT superpower. It is already, but that's not enough. It's not enough. IT, you cannot eat your iPhone. And you can say that farmers with an iPhone can have better crops. Well, I can contest that because I have a farm. I don't need iPhone for my farm. I look at my buffaloes, I look at my horses, I look at my chicken, and I know what's going on. I look at the grass, I look at everything. I don't need the iPhone. Okay. Also, I don't want to manipulate the commodity exchange. I don't want to get my agricultural product into the commodity exchange. It's like hell. So we have to be careful with these things, very careful, because very traditional agriculture knows the land, knows the people, knows the animal, and produces the best quality things. A genetically modified product, I'm not sure it's so good. If the farmer takes on a lot of loan from the government, not the government, sorry, from the bank, to buy fertilizers, if he has a contract farming, when actually he's told what to grow, he's told what kind of seed to use, he's told what kind of fertilizer to use, and he's locked into something he can't get out. Okay, I see it in Thailand. Disaster. So I would be very careful with all these things about technology development. And I say it this way. Yes, India has a huge technology, IT industry, but that itself will not solve the problem, because every empire was ended because of food. You know that? Food, first of all, and then spirituality. Because if they lost the belief which built the empire, they just disintegrated. Now, India and Eurasia belong together. You already conquered Eurasia. You already conquered China many, many times. China was under Buddhist, Ayurvedic, and yoga influence for over 1,000 years. You are there. If you go to China, now the Buddhism is much freer now in China. Of course, Mao was a horrible man. He was a criminal, but he hurt his own people just as much as everybody else. But now it's much freer. So India is in there. India has already conquered China. Central Asia is the same, because even if Central Asia is Muslim, then when you really go into it, when you really look at their culture, you say, oh, there's so many things Indian, and this is Indian, this is Indian. You look at their dances, they all Indian. Many, many things are Indian, okay? And India has a stronghold in Europe, because some of the Huna from India went straight to Hungary. So we are the not headquarter, but we are the outposts of Huna, Indian Huna culture in Europe. Now, I can show this in many, many ways. This is a separate lecture to show the incredible similarity between the Chauhans in India and Hungarian nobility. This similarity goes all the way, the behavior, the dress, even the mustache. Okay, so it's amazing. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. We can go on. Now here I show you some typical faces. Now I've been to so many countries, I recognize the Huna. I'm not getting into an anthropological description, but you can see all these faces, especially these here, and they are typical Huna faces. We are white people, but we are not like Germans. We are white people, but we mixed with many people in Eurasia, because when the Huna conquered a country, they married. You see, the king and the nobility married the women of the aristocracy of that country, and the soldiers, the warriors, married the girls in the country. They intermarried. Okay, very often the language was changed because the babies learned the language of the mother, but the culture, the genetic was going on. So, and in India, we have very interesting developments on this. Another interesting development is Bulgaria, when the Huna conquered a Slavic nation, and they married all the Slavic women, okay? And then the children learned the language from the mama. So they started to speak a Slavic language. Nevertheless, the Bulgarians are still Huna. Their mentality, everything is Huna. Now, the Hungarian is a complex issue. I don't even want to get into it. Our language seems to be very old. It's an agglutinative language, and agglutinative languages are very old. It takes about 28,000 years to develop one. So, but we don't know where is it from. We know one thing, we were member of the Scythian Hun community or of people, which consisted of many tribes, many languages. Okay, here you see the faces. See, they are typical. You can recognize the nose. The nose is usually straight. Now, the Wusun, another nation in China, always had an upward nose, okay? And then the Turk people had this aquiline nose. It's different. You see this typical nose. Okay, we can now this lady, she is actually Kyrgyz, but the Kyrgyz are also a very mixed people, just like all the Huna. Okay, we can go on. These ladies are from Kalutasek. Here you see some friends of mine. They really dress up. Okay, they dress up in 15th century Hungarian dress, and of course on horse, because Hungarians cannot walk. They can only sit on a horse. That's it. Okay? And here you see how in Mongolia they start early on horseback riding. This little creature here, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, but maybe no more than 2-3 years old, maybe 3 years old. They already put him on a horse. Okay. And here you see a Hungarian hussar. Now, it's very interesting that this dress goes back to the time of the Han dynasty of China. The Huna had the same kind of dress. You see this thing here? Yeah. Okay. Here you see an Avar style helmet and a watch. Okay. And here you see a Dunhuang painting showing the typical Huna way of shooting the arrow. They turned back on the horse and they shoot the arrow backwards. Only they did this, and you know, the Scythians and the Huna. And the hunting scene is typical because the Huna aristocracy was doing two things, polo and hunting. Polo, you know very well, because in India there's a fantastic culture of polo. But this horseback hunting is very special. They did this. Okay, the next, we can go to the next. Okay, now these are the Scythians. When I was in Sakambri with Major Mathur, I talked to the Brahmin of the Sakambri temple, and he told me that Sakambri was built by the people who called themselves Sakahuna. I was shocked. I said, are you serious? Did they call themselves Sakahuna or just Huna? Because I thought in India, the Huna were just Huna. No, he said, they never called themselves Huna. They always called themselves Sakahuna. You know what that means? That they were Scythian Huns. Now, these all the things you see here are Scythian. This means what many scholars also believes, and I believe too, that the Huna were a branch of the Scythians. They were actually Scythians. In Asia, they call them Saka, Sakya, Sak. Okay, in India, they call them Saka. Okay, in Southeast Asia, because some dynasties went to Southeast Asia, they call them Sakaya. And in Bihar, they used to call them Sakya. Buddha, Lord Buddha, was from a Sakya nation. He was a Scythian. Okay. Now, the Sakambri visit was enlightening to me because I never really read in any book so decisively that the Huna were Saka, that they were not just Huna, they were Saka Huna. There are many speculations about it, but that's all speculation. It's all in articles. but the Brahmin told me straight, these people call themselves Sakahuna. So I believe that underground research and information is incredibly important and can solve many of the problems which are sort of uh, wishy-washy in the literature. Okay, and we can go. Here you see the Scythians in fight on horse. Oh, this one has a whole story. We have a whole poem, a ballad on this. I can't reiterate it now, but you see that the woman and the man, his head is in the lap of the woman, and so on. Okay, we can go on. So this one has a Hungarian myth in it. These are also Scythians. The griffin was their sacred animal, and here you see that the Avar king. This is from the treasure of Nagy Miklós, which was found in 17th Psalm in Nagy Miklós, Hungary. Then the Austrians snatched it, and now it's the Kunsthalle in Vienna. And of course, it should not be there because it was found in Hungary, in the Hungarian kingdom. Now, here you can see the griffin. It's a royal creature with wings and a lion body. And the king is riding on this griffin. Now, this is nothing else but Pakshiraj. Pakshiraj. And the Avar, the white Hun, were really respecting and following Pakshiraj. Now, I again learned in Sakambri that if you want to respect Ambamata, first you have to pay respect to Pakshiraj, because the way to get to Ambamata is through Pakshiraj. So the Avar, the white Hun, were the followers of Pakshiraj, and you can see it. It's clear. Okay, it doesn't need any explanation. Yes, next, please. Oh, the horse. You have a marvelous horse in India, the Marwari. The Marwari is the descendant of the Huna horse of Fergana. This horse is called Argamak in Turkoman, and it's also called Akal Teke. And here you see the Akal Teke. The difference between the Indian breed is that it's a little bit more stocky, and it has these very special ears. You see, I don't know how they got it, but they got it. But it's basically a war horse. And it was basically the war horse of the Huna. Now, the Akal Teke is seemingly a very frail, thin horse, but it's like steel. There are competitions when the horses run from Samarkand to Moscow, which is more than 3,500 kilometers. And the only horse which can complete this distance, the only one in the world, is the Akal Teke. So these horses are incredible. We have in Chinese horses written that the Huna elite cavalry could make 500 li distance a day. That's 250 kilometers. Well, let me tell you that this is more than any motorized army can do today. If you have some military people in the group, they can tell you how many kilometers a convoy can take. I know that in the Iraqi war, it was 25 kilometers. Now the Huna elite cavalry could make 250 kilometers a day. When the Hungarians invaded Hungary, and they also invaded Europe because they went all over, they had a very similar success with the horses. Hold on for a second, please. So now you have a horse breed which connects you with Central Asia and the Huna, the Marwari, which is amazing. Next time I go to India, I will definitely want to see some Marwari horses and see them, take a close look. They are more stocky, a little bit heavier than the Akharteke. But in the old wall paintings of the Han dynasty in Central Asia, we could see that the Huna had a heavier horse because their elite cavalry was made of lancers and they had heavy armor. And the horse was armored too. So these horses were not the Akharteke of today, but they were stockier, heavier, stronger, just like the Marwari. Just like the Marwari. The Marwari is probably the original Huna war horse. Okay, we can go. You see the Kushan Empire, and you can see some of their coins. Let me tell you one thing. Some of these gold coins are still in circulation in Afghanistan. The Kushan gold coins, you can pay with them. Okay, we can go. Here you see Kanishka. He was one of the most famous Kushan king. Wow, he is a brutal, huge figure. You must know that the Yuechi or Kushan, they call themselves Sheresh or Sekesh. Were big people. They were very tall people. They had blonde hair, blue eyes. They were very tall. And Kanishka, the emperor here in the middle, was also. Now, the Kushans adopted Buddhism and promoted it too. But they also promoted many other religions, all the Hindu religions and the Zoroaster religions, even the old shamanistic religion, which they had. So, but Buddhism is something they also liked. And you have to add this, that the Kushan Empire had a huge trade. And the Buddhist monasteries were really the trading posts. Why? Because the traders who wandered through thousands of kilometers could have their rest in the monasteries. They had places for animals and people, and they also had storages. And they were trading actively too. So the Buddhist monasteries were some kind of trade centers, okay? Plus, many of the trade items were needed by the Buddhist monasteries, like the silk and so on, okay? So it's very interesting that most of the traders had three religions. One was the religion of their original country. The second was Buddhist, because when they were on the way, they always went to Buddhist trade posts, monasteries, which were actually trade posts and hotels and everything. And when they arrived to a new country, they also had the religion of the other country. So they had minimum three religions, but usually many more because they visited more countries. Okay, so this was the kind of religious world which those people lived in. Every religion was accepted. Every religion was tolerated. Here to the left, to the right, you also see a Kushan relief. Now you can see that it's quite naturalistic, and the style is more Indian. Okay, so you can see a Greek influence on the Buddha, especially the garment. Okay, it's like the Acropolis. And then you see a very strong Indian influence on the right. So in the Kushans had it all. It seems to me that they wanted to have the best of everything. Okay, we can go. Here you see the Indian Rangoli. I adore Rangoli. And here you see Hungarian embroidery motifs. Aren't they the same? They're absolutely the same. And if you really look at many of them, you are amazed, because they are the same motifs, except that in India, a more original practice prevailed, because the Rangoli is beautifully made on the ground by women with colored sand or rice flour, and it's done for a ritual, or it's done to start the day, to start a lucky day. Okay, so it has a very strong rule. Now, these embroideries are made on garments, but they had a similar strong rule, because the garment was considered lucky and protective if it had these motifs on it. It was totally unbearable for a Hungarian to have a garment without these. Why? Because he was not protected. It was nothing. So they had a similar protective rule, but the Indian practice, which is very beautiful, I adore it, is more ritualistic, and the Hungarian practice is also ritualistic, but it's limited to the garment, because the Hungarians never, as far as I know, but maybe I'm wrong, they never did this on the ground. Okay, next. Now here you see the kolam. The kolam is the Rangoli of the south. Incredible patterns. And now you see very similar patterns on Hungarian Easter eggs. Now the Easter eggs were a ritual art, because it was a fertility symbol, and the virgin girls gave the Easter egg, which was always red, to to their suitors, and that was really a sign of love, a sign of future marriage and fertility. And these symbols are very old, very old. Some of them go back to Bronze Age, some of them go back to Stone Age. This is very old symbols. Now the Indian kolam symbols, there are many. Okay, some of them are also very old, some of them new. There is a certain evolution. What I really don't like when they bring in very new things, but they do. But here you see the more traditional. Okay, next, please. So, now these are the columns, the knots. Now the knots have a very big role in Hungary. Only noble people could have knots on their garment. Why? Because it symbolized their commitment to the goddess, Baba or Boldogason. So the knot is actually their tie to the goddess. And here you see the Hungarian knots. And here you see the Indian knots, the kolam. These are all kolams. Sorry, the former page were Rangoli, not kolam, but this is the kolam. Yes, we can go. Here you see again more motifs from Hungary. Flower. We have to know that we call the woman flower, literally flower. if I want to be kind to my woman, I call her a flower. And the flower symbolizes women, and women have a very close relationship with flowers. And also, if you really look at these flowers, you see that they're very knowledgeable flowers. They show many, many things in the woman, even inside the woman. Okay. Here you see Transylvania. Transylvania is 102,000 square kilometer. And this part of Transylvania is in the southeast part of Transylvania is the land of the Sakya, the Sekai. Yes, we can go. Now we can. These are Sekai motifs. The interesting thing is that the Scythians or Saka had a culture before they domesticated the horse. After the horse was domesticated, which is about, well, it's debated, but 4, 5, 6, 7,000 years ago in the Ural region or in the Black Sea region, and that's debated too, but anyway, it's up there somewhere. After that, the Scythians were really ruled by, what is the order of knights? They were ruled by order of knights. And the order of knights were inner alchemists. And part of their training was the melting of the gold and the casting of the gold, which was likened to the spiritual accomplishment or spiritual development in men. So the Scythian art, we know, the gold art is really not the art of the Scythian people or Saka people. It's only the art of the nobility of the order of knights. Now, they were decisive because they founded the dynasties and everything. But the people had a much older art, this art. Now, this art, in my own research, goes back to 15,000 years. You can find it everywhere in Southeast Asia, in China, like among the Hmong, who migrated from Mongolia to China. And their culture is very, very old. And this culture has its own symbolism. I know what it is because I went to the teachers there. These are not shamans, but the wise men of the village. Basically, they are the people who have the tradition, who have the knowledge. And they explained to me what the symbols are and how they respect and use these symbols. They use these symbols today too. Now, I'm not getting into the symbols because it's a huge topic, but it leads to the prehistoric religion of mankind. So when we talk about the Saka or the Sakahuna, we not only talk about victorious kings and knights and incredible armies and incredible palaces and everything, but we also talk about a very, very old culture, which was among all the people. They all understand this. Okay, next. This is the same kind of art. Now, this is an applique from a leather coat. This is Hungarian. Okay. You can go next. Here you can see again China, Southeast Asia, but Transylvania is very similar. And now you can see the symbols of the prehistoric religion on these carpets. Just let me tell you one thing. One symbol which looks like an S. Let's go on next. like here. It's the symbol of the dragon. And sometimes they call this ancient prehistoric religion dragon religion, because the dragon was the power. And the saying goes that everything comes out of the power. And you know that even Lord Buddha was pacifying the Naga, and when he rules the world, the Naga are above his head protecting him. So the Naga religion was sort of incorporated into the Buddha teachings, but you find the dragons everywhere. Okay, you find them everywhere. But there are many other symbols here, and they all have meaning. For instance, when you have the river, it's not just the river. The river is the river of life of a person, okay, where life takes him. And then you have mountain symbols. Then you have the flower-like symbols and so on. So they all have meanings. They all have meanings. And more than that, they all have stories, and they all have rituals. So this is not just decoration, not at all. Okay, we can go. The same, you can see this. I can tell you this, from the aesthetic point of view, these carpets are unbelievable. And they are made on the simplest, with the simplest tools, just a frame, which a woman holds with his feet, okay? So it's unbelievable. And the finest ones are finer than the best Persian carpets. If it's silk, it's so dense that when you pour water on it, the water will not go through. So the quality is heavenly. Okay, we can go. Very interesting. This motif we call the swallowtail. We have that in Transylvania too. But this carpet is from China and Southeast Asia, from the tribes which are all over. They are in a huge area from central China to west and southwest and southeast China, and the Vietnamese highlands and Cambodia and Myanmar and North Thailand, where I am now. We have villages of these people. Yes. Here you see a collection. Here you see a nice girl, okay, holding up a really nice piece. Okay. What I would like to do if I get to India is to look into this folk art, because I think folk art is not really appreciated. Also, people don't think folk art is important. They don't think it has mythology. They don't think it has teaching. But the fact is that it has the oldest mythology and it has the oldest teaching. You just have to find a person who can tell you. Yes, we can go on. Transylvania. Many people think that the Huna liked the big flat areas of the steppe. It's not true. They always settled around the mountains. They loved the mountains. And the Sekai, who are absolutely Huna, they love this mountainous region. They have about 12,000 square kilometers to themselves. And as you can see, they keep it in nice order. There's a whole theory about this, which they have, the cradle. And their goal is not to make profit after the land. You know that? They say, oh, I live here to make this land beautiful. I don't want to make money out of it, but I live to make it beautiful. Beautiful means it's beautiful for the sheep, for people, for everything, every living being, but it's not the prophet, not the prophet. And here you see the typical shepherd dog. Now these are huge dogs. I see. When they meet a wolf, the wolf just goes away slowly, slowly, slowly. This dog is so strong. Usually shepherds have 15 to 20 of these dogs. And when they are high up in the mountains, the dogs go in front of the flock about 1 hour before to clean the area from the bear and the wolf. So I met these dogs too. They wanted to clear the area from me too, but they were taught not to kill. So they just put me in place. I couldn't move. Next, please. You can go. Yes, thank you very much. Here you see the Scythians drinking the cup of brotherhood. It was known that the Scythians, it's called the Anda. It was known that the Scythians drank wine with their blood, and from then on, they became blood brothers. If a blood brother was injured in a battle, the other one even sacrificed his life to get him out of the battle. And of course, here you see the Sakahuna king, and that's it. And thank you very much. You can have questions if you have anything to ask.